Hi, I'm Maud Mostly. My pronouns are they, them, and welcome to Tunes Tuesday, where today I am joined by singer songwriter and activist Robbie. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Robbie Ahmed. I go by he, him pronouns, and I am a singer, songwriter, writer, and activist. I focus a lot on kind of writing a lot of autobiographical kind of work and writing, especially around like immigrant experience and being a trans person and just navigating adventures of living through different countries and trying to be out as a trans person.
Absolutely. I love that. So you're working on it, but as of right now, you have yet to release an LP. So, how are you feeling being a queer emerging artist?
I think it's a good question. I started this journey to professionally pursue art just about 3 years ago. And I think I went really hard, but now I'm taking it slow and realizing to just do things to enjoy the journey and create art for yourself. Because we know that even in music industry, a lot of folks have high mental health pressures and issues. So I'm just kind of trying to take it slow and figure out what's best for me. If
Absolutely.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it definitely does, especially that idea of like creating for yourself, because I feel like, especially for emerging artists, like the biggest thing you can think about is wanting to, make this a sustainable career and really wanting to turn it into something. So it's really quick, like really easy to like stop, caring about what you're doing and just kind of wanting to like produce, to put stuff out there. And then that can kind of make you burn out a lot faster and realize that maybe you don't like what you're doing anymore. So no, I think it's really great that you bring up that you're really putting focus on making sure, you're making this music for you.
Yeah, and it's easy to get impatient in your journey, wishing that you put things out right away. You kind of go full blast, do as many shows as you can. But even with the pandemic, it kind of slowed that down for me, but it kind of gave me a reflective moment of what I really want to be doing and putting out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I follow you on social media, which is fine. You're great. But something I've noticed is that you attend a lot of music workshops and panels and discussions. So, what do you think the importance of ongoing learning is in your position?
I think, especially in the music industry, everything changes every few years, right? So you always want to be on top of knowing like what does music look like, because what it looked like 2 years ago is not what it looks like now. And I'm very grateful to be in Toronto. We're a city that nurtures artists and give us this opportunity to attend these workshops. And which is something like when I was young and I was back home in Bangladesh, I would have dreamt to meet the people who made the artists that I love. And now, if we have the opportunity to attend these workshops and learn from folks, is yeah, like I said, I'm very grateful for that. But to answer it more specifically, I think for marginalized artists, if you're queer, trans, or any identity, you don't get the privilege to specialize in one thing. Like you are not like a songwriter that like, oh, I just write my lyrics and I can go to a producer or I can go to a photo shoot person. I can go to a video, like somebody who will make my video. And therefore, the journey is you have to empower yourself in learning how to become an independent artist. So that's why I always am trying to learn, like, if I'm putting this artwork, how can I make it myself? How can I do it without asking for help? Like, I still want to ask for help from my queer community, but sometimes this industry is so gate kept that you have to learn a little bit more of the ins and outs to empower yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that you bring a lot of that up because so many queer musicians I speak to and ones I know are like very much into the DIY scene, more than a lot of others that I see. And it definitely touches on that, like, they didn't get the same support that lots of other people do. It was much harder for them to make the music that they really wanted to make, showcase like the lyrics that they wanted to write and what they wanted to write about. So like they all had to learn how to do it themselves. They all had to like learn to take the photos, learn to make the videos, learn to like produce the music, which obviously adds like another level of skill to being a musician in these positions, but also just an immense amount of, strength and talent to really pursue what you want to pursue.
Yeah, and I know like somebody who, because I initially wanted to be a songwriter for myself and also to write for other artists as well. And I kind of had a sometimes good experiences, sometimes really bad experiences writing for other people because people try to erase your voice as a queer artist because it might be a little not what resonates with folks. So you had to kind of learn the hard way to like create your own scene and create your own opportunities and
Yeah,
just kind of
absolutely.
like yeah.
And then, so something I wanted to bring up is a lot of artists, especially singers, can have a lot of anxiety around hormones. They want to take them, but they're worried that it will like ruin their talent and therefore like affect the career that they picture for themselves. And so, as a musician on T, for those that don't know, T refers to testosterone. Do you have anything to say to artists that feel that way? And I also just want to do a quick side note for folks listening. This question was discussed in advance. Please do not ask trans people about their bodies, their healthcare, their processes without their permission, especially if other people are present or will be listening. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to add that for folks. The question's all yours.
No, thank you for that, Maud. And yes, I totally consent to answering because I think it is part of the extra struggle for trans artists, especially around vocal training. I know for me, it's I've been on testosterone for like 3 years, and it is retraining your voice back from square one when you start T because your entire muscle memory has been lost and you're trying to like your as your bone structure changes so the way your voice feels it's like getting used to a whole new instrument but with vocal training I'm lucky to say that it does come back. I know mine is slightly stabilizing now, and if you're committed to the vocal training of doing it, your voice comes back with a better range than you had before. And I think there is hope for trans folks. I was at a show with Lucas Silvera, and people at he transitioned for a while, and his voice was on testosterone. And I tell you, he sings at at a professional level, as if he was never like there was any change in his voice, because I think he was committed to like transitioning his voice. Yeah, but I think it's also about doing it healthy and getting resources. I know one thing in my journey that was the most useful, which I think is like as a musician, if I didn't have this resource, I don't think I would be able to do stuff. Is I was at this trans voice group that was run by Igal, and I was there for 4 years. It was like the bones and structure that allowed me to pursue music later because you had just trans choir teachers that actually understood that you were going through voice changes and retraining. And I know it's hard, and I wish there are more spaces and teachers that are trans friendly that understand that you are going through puberty. How can you train safely? And also, one thing I find out about the trans voice is that you're not just dealing with voice change, you're also dealing with trauma and the way you speak. I know for me, a lot of time it was unlearning speaking up or to speak in my full voice because of just not speaking for a while, because I spent a lot of my growing up ages just being silent and not using my voice. So it's weird to project because it's a whole different feeling. So I think if that kind of answers, yeah, there is hope. And I think your voice does come back sometimes even better if you're committed to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I love you like projecting that message of hope because, this can bring a lot of anxiety to people and, especially musicians who are, terrified of going through that process and having to retrain their voice, but also, those same people knowing that they would be so much like happier and live a potentially more fulfilling life if they, you know, were able to go on something like hormones. So it's really sad, you know, when people are struggling with that and potentially, you know, giving up something that makes them happy because they're scared of, you know, giving up something else that makes them happy. So it's really nice to hear the positive note that took. And also, you know, I really liked the fact that you compared, you know, retraining your voice and working with your voice to just like working with any other like new instrument or slightly different instrument, you know, where it is all about that like relearning, potentially taking a step back, like working on it again. Yeah, I think that was really great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. And to just add a flip side to it, that if your voice did not transition the way you want it to be, if it was like a bit higher or lower, and if you didn't even decide to be on hormones and you want to sing, just one thing's like embrace your voice. People want androgynous voices. I think trans folks have history being in music from what I'm just thinking of like so many names like Jackie Shane and the folks that are singing with their voices, and I think it's just adds a unique level to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting that you bring it up because just to like to speak from personal experience, I'm not a singer. I've never been able to, you know, sing in a way that, you know, other people would enjoy. But as somebody who I'm not on hormones anymore, but I went through a period of being on hormones. Before being on hormones, like nobody really pointed out my voice. My voice really annoyed me. But then all of a sudden, after my voice changed, it's like a very normal compliment for me to get, where people will be like, hey, I'm sorry if this is like a weird thing to say, but I really like your voice. And it's kind of funny because then I get to have like a bit of the trans humor and be like, thanks, I did it myself. um, but yeah, no, I do think it's fun, and I do think there's a lot to talk about there. But we're just going to move into the last question for now. As I mentioned at the beginning, I identified you as an activist. So you do also do a lot of work in the activist and nonprofit world. And I just want to ask if you think that that work crosses over into your music.
I it's a question I'm struggling with trying to figure out my identity sometimes because I started off when I moved to Toronto as an activist who then started pursuing their art career more. And but I would say that most of my music is political, so I don't see too much of a difference in the kind of work that's being done. And also I also try to tell myself that all the successes I had in activist work came because of my arts training. Because arts training requires you to be disciplined. It requires you to like, you can't skip rehearsals. You have to be, and it's also project management. You, as an independent artist, you're continuously juggling thousands of projects at the same time. So a lot of that, and activism is just storytelling, right? I don't think I do anything different in my workshop when I'm presenting on like trans inclusion than I do when I'm telling a story in one of my other gigs. So to me, it's kind of the
Yeah,
same art form.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting to hear like all the crossover that you find, and just how much they kind of meld into each other and how like developing skills in either field like definitely benefits the other one as well.
yeah. And however, right now in my life, I am deciding to pursue art more as the activism form because I realize that there is a lot of lobbying that I could do, but I don't think I am cut out for that as a trans activist too. And I think for me, it's just reaching people directly in their empathy through art is the way that I want to pursue this kind of activism and be able to tell stories because they kind of tell you more about access needs for trans people rather than yeah, other way. Even though that work is also important, it has to be pushed, but I think we have to choose what kind of activist roles we want to take on.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. Like, I bring that up all the time. You know, I feel like there's a lot of shaming for the kinds of activist work that people choose to do instead of acknowledging that, like, you know, everyone's different. We all have different skills and different personalities. And that's going to mean that different kinds of activism is more appropriate for each of us. And when we can all explore those options and find what works best for us, we can really find the joy in that activism, which is going to sustain us for longer. And then it's also going to make us be able to build off each other's like collective movements so much better.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I will say for anyone who wants to, hear more about Robbie, learn more, pay attention to see if any music is coming out soon, links will be found below. So make sure to check him out more. And I'll leave it to you if you'd like to say a little send off for anyone.
No, thank you for having me, Mott. It's a great opportunity.
For sure. Anytime. Okay. Well, thank you and bye, folks.
Bye-bye.